I call this meeting of the Pinellas County School Board, May 17th, 2022, to order. Let's begin today's meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Vice Chair Lisa Kane. So everyone, will you please stand?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dr. Grego, are there any recommended changes to the agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair, I have one agenda amendment to the agenda. I'm adding 6.5, which is the administrative appointment of the Executive Director for Human Resources Services. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Grego. I find with good cause to amend the agenda as described by Dr. Grego. May I have a motion?
Move to approve the agenda as amended.
Okay, Mrs. Cook, may I have a second, please?
Second.
Mr. Dudley? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, 7-0, it passes. Okay, as we address the selection of our superintendent, the board will make a decision of great magnitude. Our decision today will have a direct impact on the continued success of Pinellas County schools. We have an elected duty to represent the public. More importantly, our decision will impact the lives of over 100,000 young people and 13,300 employees. With that in mind, our discussions should be open, candid, and guided by what is best for the students and the taxpayers that we all serve. To start this day off, I would like to review the process of the superintendent search. Then we will hear from the public on this item and any other agenda item. Following public comment, the board will discuss and vote. Then I will provide an overview of the next steps after our discussion is made today. First, let's review the process that we have had so far. Dr. Grego announced his retirement on January 6, 2022. The board met during a workshop with the Florida School Board Association as the search consultants on January 25th to discuss the timeline and the associated activities with the timeline. The board held another 5 work sessions from February through mid-May to discuss superintendent search activities. An online input survey developed and conducted by the Pinellas Education Foundation was conducted in February and resulted in 3,703 responses. We held 5 focus groups and 3 community forums that also had virtual attendance options. Advertisements for the superintendent's position ran from March 14th to April 13th. 19 applications were received. 3 finalists were named on April 20th. Each subsequently provided answers to written and video questions which were posted on our website. The 3 finalists were interviewed on May 11th and 12th, first by the full board and then one-on-one interviews. Finally, a hybrid meet and greet for the 3 finalists was held on May 11th, and feedback from those interactions was shared with the board on the morning of May 12th. Additional input was received throughout the weekend leading up to today's meeting. Before we begin our discussions of the superintendent selection, we will hear public comment on agenda items to select the new superintendent. Okay, the opportunity is to provide the public an opportunity to give comments one last time and on not only the superintendent but agenda items, all right? Today's selection of the new superintendent is probably the biggest decision we have to make. All right. The board is committed to a standard of civility, and decorum in conducting our meetings. We ask that you assist us in maintaining the civil and constructive environment while confirming your comments to the agenda items at today's special meeting. Thank you. Remember, this is being broadcast, so if you're a speaker, let's come together and work together today. All right, Mrs. Hauk, are there any speakers for the agenda items?
Yes, Madam Chair, board members, and Dr. Grego, we have 3 speakers this morning. The first is Ms. Linda Lerner.
Well, it is great to be here. The last time I was on this side of the microphone was 1990, advocating against corporal punishment in the old building. Now I'm limited to 3 minutes. I even took notes. However, I am here to really do something positive and support a decision you're going to make today. I was part of 3 superintendent searches, and it was a great one when we picked Dr. Grego. But I have to say, I compliment FSBA and the board. This was by far the best search, where everything was on the web, you know, all the videos and all the written material and the whole interview. I could have just come here and said, I've known Kevin. I'll call him Kevin until hopefully he's superintendent. Then I will call him Mr. Hendrick. But for a long time, I may have even been at his graduation. I think Largo High, 75. I went to Largo's graduations then. And I could have just said, I know him. I've worked with him. I have heard the feedback from teachers, from staff, from parents, from businesses, from community people. And I'm being honest, as you know I try to be. I never heard anything negative. I just heard compliments. In fact, someone I just met recently, a few days ago, we were talking and she told me, I told her about the search and I mentioned Kevin's name. Oh, my daughter went to Northeast High School a number of years ago and my husband is still involved because of him and the whole school. What I did is my due diligence. I had a good time doing it. I read everything. I read, listened to every video, looked at the complete interview, and I came to the firm conclusion that if I did not know Kevin and was just going by all the information on the web, I would see him as the outstanding candidate who can be a true leader following Dr. Grego and board members that have put this district on a track forward. I look forward. I have to say the other 2 candidates are dedicated educators and experienced, but Kevin surpasses in all areas. So I look forward to my continuing commitment, especially now that I'm coming out in public without a mask. And, I look forward to my continuing support of the schools and working with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Nancy Velarde, speaking to item 5.1.
Good morning. Last Thursday, PCTA PESPA had the extreme pleasure of hosting a meet and greet with the 3 finalists for the superintendent position. Kevin Hendrick, Michael Ramirez, and Ann Hembrook all attended and introduced themselves to the attending members from both unions. It was a very refreshing, enjoyable evening. I believe that Pinellas County Schools will be in good hands under the leadership of any of these excellent candidates, especially after hearing their responses to the one question I asked of them for the benefit of all in attendance. I asked them to describe their style of leadership, their philosophy on collaboration and input from the employees. All 3 responded with the words I was hoping to hear. The importance of relationships being the key to success, the complete understanding and belief in the notion of fair process, and the general focus on the necessity of buy-in from all involved in our important work of educating our future. My members and I were relieved to hear that not one of the candidates believe in a top-down pyramid form of leadership, which is rapidly becoming passé because it no longer brings the results most organizations are seeking. While a leader must bear the burden of making final decisions, those decisions are illegitimate if they are arrived in a vacuum and if they're not fully explained to those who ultimately will have to put them into practice. This almost always leads to lukewarm reception and thus lukewarm results. Our members clearly expressed a deep love for their home county and school system, as well as for their students, and engaged in lively conversation with all three candidates. They were impressed with the willingness of all three to hear their concerns and ideas with open hearts. It was refreshing to see my members, your employees, with such hope in their faces as they envisioned the prospect of working toward continuing and improving success here with PCS and PCTA in true partnership. We're sure this is the path to greater success in testing scores, school scores, but more importantly, in providing a true quality education for every student in Pinellas County. While I adore Kevin Hendrick, and I do support him, I wouldn't let any of these others wander too far off. Pinellas would benefit from them all. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kimberly Works, speaking to item 5.1.
Forgive me with the boot. I am not as spry as I once was. Good morning. I've always said that, I'm just a parent. However, I believe that parents have a very strong voice. I have been a parent in Pinellas County Schools for 15 years. I was a part of the parent population when we selected Dr. Grego, which I do believe was a very, very good choice. I have been a part of this selection process since the very first meeting. I have watched the whole entire process and been a part of it. I was here on May 11th, and I met all three of the candidates, got to shake their hands, and got to speak to each one of them. And I think you chose very, very wisely. I think they all had a very big passion for the schools. However, being a part of the school board meetings, and I have, as most of you probably have paid attention, been a part of the Pinellas County Schools workshops, the board workshops. And I came to those workshops to learn more about the actions of the school board and how things function within the school board. And I've seen Mr. Hendricks in action, and I am very impressed. I think he has a great passion for the district. I think he loves the students. I think he loves the faculty, and I really think that he has the best intentions of this district at heart. Although I was very impressed with the other two candidates that you chose. I think they were wonderful, and I think they were very well educated and up to the task. My heart is with Kevin Hendricks. I was very impressed with him, and as a mother of 3 graduates of Pinellas County Schools, including 2 that are exceptional student education graduates and have done very well as graduates of Pinellas County Schools. I am also going to be the grandmother, step-grandmother of 4 Pinellas County School students, including another that is exceptional student education. So I am very invested in the decision that you make for superintendent, and I truly believe that Kevin Hendricks is the correct choice. I put my trust in him, and I put my faith in him as the superintendent for our schools. But I want to thank you for all the hours that you've put in, the time away from your family that you've put in making this selection. And I just want to thank you for everything that you have done to do this. I know that has been very trying and taxing on all of you, but I just think that Mr. Hendricks is the correct choice. And I thank you for giving the time to listen to all of us today. Thank you.
Mrs. Hauk, are there any other speakers?
No, Madam Chair, there are no more speakers.
Okay. We will now move to consent item 5.1, the selection of our new superintendent. Before we begin discussing the item, I'd like to thank Mrs. Cook for serving as the board's liaison with FSBA and the wonderful work you've done. Thank you, Mrs. Cook. I also like to thank FSBA Andrea Messina, Dr. Bill Vogel, and not here today, but very important in this John Reichert, for their work. From the very beginning, this process has been a smooth, thorough, and a transparent process. And finally, I'd like to thank our communication department, Jennifer Dull, Beth Harradine, and Sean Clark, and the rest of the team for working side by side with FSBA to make sure the process was open and accessible involving as many of the stakeholders as we can. I'd like to also inject right here a big thank you to Mrs. Hauk and to Kim Christie. They work behind the scenes hours making sure everything has gone smoothly. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. All right, colleagues, we are at the point now where we can have a discussion or make a motion. Ultimately, we must make a motion if we believe that one of the three finalists is the right person to be our next superintendent. So let me open the floor for discussion or a motion on any and all of the candidates. Okay, we'll start the discussion. It has been moved that the school board, okay, sorry, I'm ahead of myself. Let's start with the discussion. Does anyone want to open it up? Ms. Hine, you're shaking your head. Oh, Mr. Dudley does? Okay.
Are we going to do discussion?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Okay. I can make my motion?
Yes.
All righty. Call for motion that the school board offer the position of superintendent to Mr. Kevin Hendrick and authorize the contract negotiations to begin, led by Attorney Kapersky.
I have a motion by Mr. Dudley. Do I have a second? Ms. Kane? All right, is there any discussion on any or all of the candidates at this time? Ms. Hine?
Thank you. Yes, this has been a significant process, so I would like to share a few thoughts. I appreciate your time. So I'd first like to start by expressing that this process has left me even more excited and optimistic about public education, both the present and the future. It was an experience of professional pleasure to be expertly brought through this process by FSBA. Thank you, Andrea, John, and Bill. Reading the 19 applications from across the country, I feel like gave a bird's eye view into the experience and capabilities of many who commit their careers to the education of young people. And boy, to meet and hear from and interact with the bright-minded, bright-eyed, and highly capable three finalists for our superintendent schools has left me with a deep knowing that public education, with people like these who raise their hands for leadership, that's not an easy thing to do, to raise your hand, is in good hands. And so it just again inspires me and wants me to thank everyone who commits their careers to public education and who continue to learn themselves and expand and hone their craft, is all of these candidates. I would like to share, a few thoughts. I really enjoyed, I don't have to go every single candidate, but I do want to share a few thoughts. This was a lot of time and energy on all of our parts and all of their parts, and so I think it's fair to honor that. So, sharing my thoughts on Mr. Ramirez, the things that jumped out at me in our group interview, he was personable, comfortable. He was an optimist with experience and with a proven track record. I was inspired by his personal story. I valued his statements around being bold and not compromising values when talking about educational equity. Again, his proven success in Broward County and his balance with being grounded in the why that he talked about. In our private interview, I learned about his professional engagements with the Aspen Institute, the Council of Great City Schools, other colleagues and conferences, and the things he does to stay abreast of what works and doesn't work in education and how to stay inspired himself. I really enjoyed that time. And with Dr. Hembrook, from the minute she joined us in that public interview, I was impressed and energized. She's smart, thoughtful, bright-eyed, and I think she's ready to lead. The items that stand out for me in that interview were the accountability model, having multiple facets, not just one, and she was able to enumerate what she thought those facets of accountability included. She has experience and thoughts on policy engagement with our legislative leaders. She sets up people for success, empowering leaders. And as someone mentioned in the public comments that came in, and thank you for all those public comments, she's a methodical thinker. She is clearly quite bright in asking the right questions, interpreting the data, and then leading a team for implementation. I felt like her quick clarity on protecting student programs and protecting people if we were in a fiscal crisis. She quickly identified those priorities, which I valued, in her clear, committed, and driven work ethic. In our private interview, we discussed, again, the accountability model and new language and frameworks, and including social emotional experiences and climate and culture. I enjoyed hearing things around school-based budgets and district budgets and such. And just overall, I find Dr. Hembrook to be a bright-minded, bright-eyed, experienced public education professional who is ready to lead. I'll finish sharing my thoughts on Mr. Hendrick, so I would share the following. Certainly, we've all known Mr. Hendrick since before the interviews, and as school board members, he has briefed us at workshops and board meetings, and we've had individual idea sessions and work sessions with him. Prior to my being on the school board, I knew Mr. Hendrick from the Little League field as well, where we both coach our sons' teams. And I would try to be respectful of his space, but I would also bend his ear on education in Pinellas County, and he was all for it. And as a community member wrote to us in the recent days, she said, if you want to know what a leader is made of, watch them coach children. From our public interview with Mr. Hendrick, I valued his enumeration that climate and culture leads everything else, and that for Pinellas to become an A district, that's a place we need to be looking now. When we talked about accountability, he named that leaders and leadership. The folks who set that climate and culture are the most important elements of accountability. He's shared about how to handle a situation where an employee is failing to perform, and that's a situation that takes character and conviction and compassion. And the way he shared that you start from the faith that they want to be there, that you praise in public and correct in private. It's important to name the challenge and make clear expectations from there. It reminded me of what I learned in school, which was John Paul Jones's qualifications of a naval officer, a very, very similar approach. He shared that he believes, schools must have enough autonomy to be able to innovate and excel, but also have a baseline of common standards. His story of turning around an underperforming high school, but not by himself, through leadership and teamwork. A key for me was hearing him immediately, personally, and knowingly speak about valuing and supporting our teachers. He leads, yes, though from what we learned from those who have actually worked with him, he leads with connection. One person who wrote us said, quote, I had the pleasure of working with him at Northeast High School from 2008 to 2010, and again from 2012 to 2017. Please notice I said with and not for, which was intentional. The leadership style he used while our principal was consistent, fair, respectful, and inspiring. Another teacher that worked with Mr. Hendrick who wrote us said he had the honor of working with Mr. Hendrick, that he's a positive communicator and collaborator and a person with the vision to raise the bar at our schools. His passion for kids is above any administrator I've ever worked with. I'm almost done. In our private interview, he talked about school as an experience, the importance of communication, climate, and culture, shared places and people and resources that he relies on to learn what's happening across the state, across the country, stay inspired, know what works and doesn't work, all of his professional development and engagement. I loved hearing about that. And not surprising to anyone, we had a good conversation. But a key takeaway for me in this process has been that while we heard from some stakeholders, primarily teachers, we really didn't hear a lot from our wider community on this selection. And what that meant to me, and especially as I talked with people around the community, because I would ask them, what that meant to me is that, understandably so, people primarily care about their teachers in their classroom and what that experience is like. And then also about their principal, because the school principal sets the climate and hires and develops those teachers, thereby influencing the entire experience of school. So this led me to asking each candidate in our one-on-one interviews what qualities and characteristics they look for when hiring school leaders. That is an extraordinarily important decision, and our area leaders that they make that influences the experience of education. And also the qualities and characteristics of executive team members, because that could be different. And Mr. Hendrick, more than, just really immediately and clearly enumerated what he looked for in a school leader, someone who can motivate the entire school community, one's presence or illumination, academic knowledge and experience with success, not just buzzwords, growth mindset, deep belief in all kids, and diversity of lived experience and of thought, ability to counter and ideate. On top of that, he's been to every single one of our schools, all 140 plus of them in this district. He knows our teachers, our support staff, our students, our variety of communities, and our leaders, present and our future leaders. So who better to have a better voice in those crucial decisions? I also just want to say, saying that one cannot be a captain of industry in their own hometown is like saying that because Tom James was raised in Pinellas, went to high school in Pinellas, Raymond James was founded in Pinellas, that there's no way he could be the CEO who oversaw growth from 35 local to 18,000 global employees into a market capitalization rate of $19 billion. A hometown person, yes. I think our world is connected, and if one is an impatient optimist who is intellectually curious, driven by excellence, plus grounded in their love for their home, then yes, they can connect and learn and grow and lead our community in progress and prosperity. Mr. Hendrick has a proven track record of success. He's an innovative and thoughtful educator and a valued and admired leader. I strongly support the motion for Kevin Hendrick to be the superintendent of schools.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Cook?
I think it's very well said, Ms. Hine. Your synopsis of all three of the candidates. I've said all along, even looking at their resumes, that we had three candidates, all three, which I believe at some point in time will be a superintendent. They all came to earn this position. Nobody was, including Mr. Hendrick, who is the local. He came to the interview totally prepared and ready to earn that position. It is not a gift that I would say I would be giving. Many of the qualities and strengths that Ms. Hine mentioned, I would support 100%. I think each one of them had a unique way and a unique perspective as to where we would go next and what we would be doing. And so our decision became one, or my decision became one of who is the best to lead Pinellas County. In our interview, not only did we talk about some of the other specifics, I talked about the board superintendent relationship and how do you work with a very diverse board, very diverse in thought, very diverse in expectations and areas that may need a little more growth. And I was very pleased with the answer. It was finding out what is that thing that each board member really is interested in, and how do we incorporate that into the district, understanding that each one of us represents the community, and the community is equally as diverse as we are. There were also many comments about the things that they would incorporate or add to what's happening in Pinellas County. I hate to say change because it really wasn't change things. They were all very impressed with where we were, how we were moving forward, and the things that Dr. Grego has done. But what are the things that we would concentrate to grow a little bit better? Including Mr. Hendrick. It wasn't just, we're going to do the same old, or I'm not just going to be moving things forward. He too had some very specific things that I agreed with that we need to move forward. So it came down to who's best for Pinellas County. And I honestly believe, and I will support the motion, that Kevin Hendrick is the best person to continue to lead Pinellas County forward. In addition to that, I want to echo my thanks to Kathy Hauk, Kim Christie, and all of the staff that worked on it. They were phenomenal. You have no idea the work that went into making this an open, transparent process. Hours went into it, and I thank them all. And as a result, I think the community also was able to look at it, and the comments that we received were very insightful. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I too support Mr. Hendrick.
Any other board members? Would you like to make any comments? Ms. Edmond?
Mrs. Hine and Mrs. Cook, you guys mentioned a lot of the things that I would have said. However, I think it's important to mention the survey. We received a lot of feedback, and the top 5 qualities listed on the survey included integrity, understands local community needs, effective communicator, builds and supports strong teams and instructional background. So that was a component of what I looked at when watching the videos, the interviews, and reading the information presented, as well as the resumes. Something we discussed when we were narrowing down to the finalists was the length of time in positions. And there are several candidates who had spent several years in their positions, and there are some. And knowing Mr. Hendrick from being an educator, working with the teaching and learning department in various capacities, and as a school board member, there are several strengths. And some of the things that I learned about him in our one-on-one interview is that he's an independent thinker, and he's able to make his own decisions, and he plans on being a collaborative leader, which is something I think is extremely important. He talked about board member relationships and how he plans on being more inclusive and opening up discussions more so he could receive our thoughts. And I think that's important. Something he said at our board interview that stuck out to me was related to equity with excellence for all and the culture that we have built in this district, as well as how he would handle public criticism as it relates to equity. And I think we need a strong leader who's going to stand firm on the values that we have. And I saw that in him. He was clear in his communication, clear that he would be direct. And I think, again, that that's something that's admirable. It takes a lot to put your name out there. It takes a lot to just figure out that you plan on taking this step to lead. And knowing that he's worked within the district, and some people may have their own views of him because of his work, I think there's a lot of opportunity for people to get to know him better, as well as how he plans on being a collaborative leader. I think it's also worth mentioning that Mr. Ramirez was very passionate and appeared to speak from the heart and shared building relationships as a strength, and that he believes in healthy discourse and having the right voices at the table. I think it's important that moving forward, we continue to allow everyone to provide feedback, whether it's teachers, support professionals, parents, administrative, business leaders. We need that feedback. Those partnerships have continued to move us forward. And again, I think having someone who knows the players or know key people and has the ability to build relationships within the community is key. Something else mentioned was the work that he's done within the district as it relates to the Bridging the Gap plan. And I know that's something of deep concern to many people. And he is continuing to be in communication with community stakeholders, COQUEBs, and things of that nature to make sure everyone is aware. And his relationship with the Pinellas Education Foundation and the literacy programs that are growing, and his ideas around that, it's enlightening. It's very, very encouraging to see the opportunities that that we have available. I also like to mention Dr. Hembrook. She was very approachable, as Laura mentioned, when she just made you smile when she started talking. She's very thoughtful to the point where she started writing down the questions to make sure she was answering them appropriately. And I saw her as a methodical, very, very detail oriented when it came to the questions. And I just think it's important to acknowledge all of the candidates, but I'm in support of the motion that was provided.
Thank you. Ms. Kane?
Thank you so much, and thank you to FSBA and to all of our administrative leadership that has worked so hard to put this search together, to make sure that it was transparent, to do all of the hard work behind the scenes, getting this out to the public so that we could receive comment from all of our stakeholders, our teachers, our parents, our community, our students, from every which angle. I know there's been a lot of people on the team that have worked very hard to be sure that we had all the information possible to make this very important decision for all of the stakeholders involved. Throughout this process, I've learned so much. I learned a lot from all three of the candidates, and I do feel strongly that as a team, we picked three candidates, all three of which are incredible candidates, all three of which could be a superintendent. I feel they all did a fantastic job at the interviews. It is not easy to be fired upon like that by 7 different people with all these questions, and they had fantastic answers in their own ways. They had ideas of leadership and what that means and how they could take Pinellas County to a new level of leadership. And I have to agree with all my colleagues, you are all spot on. Mr. Ramirez, very passionate person. I learned something very important about him in the personal interviews, and I want to share it because it really touched on something I feel passionately about. He talked a lot about finding ways to connect to those forgotten students in the middle. He was very student oriented, and I loved that he mentioned that because in leadership, so much time is spent talking about the bookends, our achievement gap or our gifted students on either end of the spectrum, but there's the students right there in the middle who we need to connect to, and we need to find ways to continue to connect to them no matter what that takes. And I really enjoyed that part of the interview. It's like he shared with me many programs and many ways that he has connected to students in different counties that he's worked in his career. Also, our Mrs. Dr. Hembrook, I enjoyed getting to know her. She was so approachable, so kind and so passionate, and I think she would make a fantastic leader as well. What stood out to me about Mr. Hendrick in the interviews was his connection to detail into Pinellas County. He had a firm grasp on our needs, a firm grasp on where we need to go, and a detailed plan to how to get us there. Not just an idea, but a formula and a path and a step-by-step process to get us to results. And I feel that that detail is important in a leader because a leader is going to shape the process that we take in the district. And I was very impressed with how he came to the table with fresh ideas and ideas that were not just general but specific to Pinellas County. I asked him questions about our CTE programs, and he had very specific ways to expand upon those, very specific ways to look at all different areas of our leadership process in Pinellas, and I appreciate that. In addition, he's a passionate leader, and I have heard nothing but wonderful things from everyone who knows him in the district, from principals, from teachers, from community members who have stopped me in my day-to-day life to tell me how fantastic of a leader that he is. And so I was very impressed with all the candidates, but I do support this motion.
Dr. Carr?
Thank you. I think my colleagues have really done a wonderful job articulating the strengths of the candidates. I certainly support this motion. I'd also like to commend my colleagues for the hard work throughout this process. I was personally impressed with the amount of time each of the team devoted to this process. When we had to narrow it down to the 3 candidates during our workshop, so much time had been invested in reviewing every one of the resumes by all of the folks here, and reflecting on what the community sought and valued as being priority, as well as doing a lot of behind the scenes asking and questioning to narrow it down to the 3, which was a very important step prior to spending time with the folks individually. And I'll just say how excited I am that Mr. Hendrick will be leading our district if the vote goes in that direction. I've had the opportunity to know him over the years and work with him in a variety of roles that he's held at the district and that I've held in the district. And one of the opportunities we had was many years ago, and it was alluded to during the interview, prior climate surveys were done, where there was a great deal of input given about your principal, a lot of comments and a lot of very specific questions. And when we analyzed that data and we looked at all of the comments, his climate surveys were so far and above what any expectation was back then. And I think we have seen that grow, and it was exemplified in some of the answers to the questions that took place during our interview. One of the comments that he made that stuck with me when asking about retention was his comment that you don't leave a job, you leave a situation, which really demonstrated how important climate, culture, and strong leadership is for the success of any school or school district. And I think that we have seen that throughout this interview process, the value and importance of building relationships and having a rapport with the folks you work with so that this organization can grow when it accepts many ideas and integrates them into the strategic directions that we have. And I think that Mr. Hendrick will be able to lead us in that direction. And I also want to acknowledge Dr. Grego during this process, how I've admired that you have let it go and allowed it to move forward. And I don't mean let it go like we're in a disengaged way, but in a respectful way, to allow folks to continue the work you've done and make it their own. And it has been a privilege to serve on this board during this time. So thank you.
Mr. Dudley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I made the motion, and I'm certainly not against, but I didn't get a chance to say anything about the whole process. And I have to tell you that there was a lot of hard work involved. And I want to thank the School Board Association for that is a tremendous amount of work. And Pinellas Education Foundation also, great partners. And I think that's kind of indicative of Pinellas County. We partner with people and we get things done. And I was very impressed with the 3 finalists, and all 3 of them will be superintendents, I feel, somewhere, someday, because they have that passion, and, you can fake it sometimes, but passion comes through. And you can tell when a person really, really loves doing what they do. And I'm not going to talk long because I have a voice like a foghorn. And but I just wanted to say thank you to the entire process. It was an honor to be part of it. And I think that all the candidates should be given a big thank you, sticking the neck out and doing it. You put yourself in public, it's there. And for you to see, and we get all the comments, I sat there yesterday and going through them for the second time, all the comments we had listed and from the public. And I was very, very, I was very thrilled that there was that much work put into the comments. A lot of them were, most all of them were right on. I mean, they knew what they were looking for. They interviewed the candidates, and they knew. And that really kind of solidifies my stance, and I'm sure everybody else here. So, again, thank you for everything, and I'm ready to vote anytime.
I'd like to first say thank you to all the candidates. I believe all three will land on their feet in the right position. With that said, I support Kevin Hendrick. I was so impressed, not only with the interviews, but the one-on-one. I really got to see a side of Kevin. We had some very deep conversations. I am a true believer that even the superintendent needs to take time for himself or herself and their family. Because if you lose your health, there goes everything. And Mr. Hendrick, when he talked about his family and the commitments he's made, just really solidified that he's got his act together. And then I think about the teachers and the support staff and the parents. We want that even transition, nice and smooth. Mr. Hendrick always has a smile on his face. He knows how to make people feel comfortable. I just, what a wonderful new possible leader. He has my support, but I do thank the other two candidates because they were just as wonderful, and they will find great jobs. I'm confident in that. Any further discussion? All right, if there's no further discussion, all in favor, please signify by saying aye to the hiring of Mr. Kevin Hendricks.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, it is unanimous. Mr. Kevin Hendrick will be our new superintendent. Dr. Grego, would you please go get him? While Dr. Grego is going to get Mr. Hendrick, the next steps in the process. The new selected superintendent will need to satisfactorily complete all pre-employment processes as set forth by PCS and the Florida statute. Contract negotiations will begin. It is within this contract that a starting date and compensation package will be agreed upon. Once a contract has been tentatively agreed upon, it will come before the board for official final approval. Transition plans will be made for working with Superintendent Dr. Grego and for assuming the responsibilities of superintendent. I'm going to wait for Mr. Hendricks. So, again, thank you all for your input. It was so important to hear from everyone. And, I hope other districts that are now ready to face well, never mind, because here he comes.
Do I have an hour and 15 minutes? Is that right?
It's great.
Thank you. Board members, thank you for your comments. Thank you for the selection. Mr. Dudley, thank you for the nomination. Mrs. Kane, the second, and all 7 of you for such kind words. It's a little bit of a surreal moment for me, but I first and foremost want to thank you for your trust and your belief, not only in me, but in the vision and in the words and the things that I had to share. The process was laborious, but I thought it lent itself to showing the true person that all of the candidates were. And like many of you said, I commend Mr. Ramirez and Dr. Hembrook. They are wonderful individuals who did a great job, and I was pleased to meet them last week. The process that you had with the interviews, the videos, certainly the work in here in our one-on-ones, and all that FSBA did, you were fantastic in terms of your communication and professionalism. It was a pleasure to be a part of, even as it was rigorous. I want to thank all of the people who gave input. I know you all had a lot. For me personally, the hundreds and hundreds of colleagues who reached out to me, some with support, some with advice, some with things I needed to fix, and a little bit of everything in between. It was wonderful to hear from so many people over the last several months. I do want to take the opportunity, if I may, Madam Chair, to thank Dr. Grego. His leadership in this district for the last decade has been nothing short of remarkable. Yes, we have improved graduation rates. Yes, we have more advanced placement. Yes, 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 all those things. But the daily commitment to excellence that you have, that everyone who's worked with you knows about, is remarkable. And to do so with such consistency and fervor every single day, and the stability that you brought to this district is amazing. And I hope I can do the same. Thank you, Dr. Grego. I also want to thank my family. I believe my son is watching in his art class. Thank you, Ms. Delatorre. My wife as well. I am so excited to be doing this and to be doing it here in Pinellas County. It is a true pleasure and something that is really a lifelong dream. So I thank each of you for your trust, your support, and I look forward to supporting our vision and our mission and preparing every student for college, career, and life. Thank you so much.
I know, I'm crying too. Okay, wow. Now we will move on to our consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Ms. Kane, do I have a second? Mr. Dudley. Okay, is there a discussion? Dr. Grego?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, all right, all in favor of the consent agenda items, say aye.
Aye.
All right, it looks like it passes 7-0. Having no further business this morning, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for participating, and today is a wonderful day. The sun is definitely shining on Pinellas County Schools, and I believe we are going to move forward in such a strong, perfect fashion. And Dr. Grego, I thank you for your service. It's been wonderful. So, thank you, everyone.